Hi everyone, I'm John. Over here on my left is my wife Maureen, and then there's our friend Di here. And we want to take you on a journey over the next few weeks of discovery and discovering the true meaning of love. That's our mission, if you like, or our goal. So I hope you'll find this not only interesting, but I hope you'll find it also very helpful, because in all the business of life, you know, there's so much going on around us and we're so occupied with stuff. And, you know, there's a lot of doom and gloom out there as well, isn't there? There's loads of stuff coming at us from, you know, through the TV, the radio, the media, whatever. I mean, you might even think, oh, this is just another thing, but I hope you'll listen in, because all around us, it's, you know, it's all busy, busy, busy. We're always on the go. And, you know, sometimes, I don't know about you, but sometimes you sort of want to know, what's life really all about? Why am I here? Can't someone give me a bit of hope? And so when you're at home or in, you know, some quiet corner, even briefly, no hustle, no bustle going on, you're just, you know, you have those moments when actually there's a bit of peace and you can actually hear yourself think. Sometimes we can ask ourselves, how do I really feel about everything inside? You know, what's happening to me? How do I feel? Because sometimes we fill our time and occupy our time with so much stuff. I mean, you can't even go into the chemist these days or the doctors or whatever, but there's music playing. There's always music. Everywhere you go, even in the bank they play music. It's almost like it seeks to drown everything out that's going on around you, so you kind of don't have to think about it. But actually, sometimes it's good to stop and ask yourself, how do I really feel inside? What's going on for me? You know, how is my life? What's happening with me? And so a long time ago, through circumstances at the time, because, well, to be honest, I think I was on the verge of a breakdown. It actually made me stop and think about, you know, what was going on with me. And I started to recognize there was something missing in my life. There was this great big void, this great big gap in my life, you know. I felt like there was a huge hole inside of me that nothing could fill. I knew my wife and kids loved me, but there was a longing, there was a deep longing inside for something that, you know, it's got to be something better than this, than all that I'm involved in and everything. There's got to be something. So I realized I was trying to fill this hole in my life. I was trying to fill it with all kinds of stuff, you know, sport, work, career, money, position, anything, trying to fill it. But none of it actually worked. I found, you know, after a while you do something, say entertainment. So you'd go off somewhere and watch the film or whatever. And, you know, I suppose because you were secretly hoping that this void would get filled somehow, but it never worked. None of it worked. You could go dancing, doing whatever, but none of it actually worked. And actually, it was my wife who said to me, you know, because she had been through something similar herself in the past, and she said to me, I think you're on the verge of a breakdown if you don't stop. So what are you trying to fill your void with? Because frankly, we've all got it. You know, haven't we? I'm saying to the guys in this room, we've all got this void in our lives. We've all got this emptiness, this empty space in us. So it's actually, I think I've realised, it's in every human heart. Every one of us in our innermost being, our secret life, has got this void, this longing. There's got to be something better than this. And so, you know, I realised I just wanted to be loved, not for what I did, but I wanted to be loved for me. I wanted to be loved for who I am and not for what I do. How about you out there? Is that how you feel sometimes? Well, why can't someone just love me and satisfy me inside, and not expect me to do anything for it, you know, to earn it in some way? So it may seem a strange thing to say, but when we feel like this, but the fact is, we were made for love. You know, I've come to realise that God made us for love. He didn't make us for trouble. We were born into trouble, but there are reasons for that as well. I've discovered that for myself, that there are reasons for why we are like we are. And so there is hope, actually. There is some hope, but we have to look in the right place for it. And so when this need is not met, we do genuinely feel empty inside. When this need for God's love, because actually that is the key to it all, is to know you're loved for who you are and not for what you do. When His love is missing from our lives, we are left with this sense of emptiness, this longing. It's just a fact. It's there, and it doesn't matter what you try, you just can't get rid of it. You know, you can't somehow rub it out. You know, it'd be great if you could get a big rubber and rub it out of it, but you just can't do that. So this in turn, you know, it leaves us going after all sorts of things. You know, for me particularly, it was career. Going after a career, wanted to get to the top and all the rest of it, to fill the void. But none of it actually worked in the end. None of it filled that deep longing I found inside. And it's a deep longing in every human being. I believe that. You know, I've travelled to 6 different continents, and 6 of the 7, I should say, and I've discovered people all around the world who feel the same, just the same. So how did it come about in the first place? That's the thing. How did this void come about? How did it happen? Well, when God made man, it was for family. It was for relationship and fellowship, not only with one another, but with Him. You know, to live as like a family with Him as our Father. And so, you know, He made us because He wanted us as His sons and daughters. And so, unfortunately, the first human beings, you know, our first parents, Adam and Eve, they got it all wrong. They went against Him, and sadly the relationship got broken. And so if that hadn't happened, every family on earth would have known God as Father, because it would have been, the parents would have known it, and then they would pass it on to the children. It would have been quite normal and quite natural for that to have happened. The love of God would be the norm and prevail in the home. It would be normal. Not, you know, some religious thing. It would be just we would just live like that. Normal human beings living like that. Instead, all men and women are born into this world as orphans, in the sense we don't know God as our Father. So we don't know his love, his unconditional love. There's no strings. He loves you because he wants to love you, but we have to let him. We have to allow him to. So we're born separated from God because of what Adam and Eve did at the beginning, because they went against him. And so because of that, we're all born into this world orphans. And our need for love, for the love and acceptance by God, it has to be met. Or we get ourselves into all sorts of problems and difficulties. We turn to this, that, or anything else. Anything to try and fill the void, but only he can do it. It's only his unconditional love, when we allow him to love us, that we find that void wonderfully gets satisfied. I don't know how he does it, but I know wonderfully it's satisfied within. And that's, when it's missing, that's this underlying deep reason why we feel like we are, and we feel like we do. So our need for love and acceptance by God, it just has to be met. If it's not met, we will go through life with this longing deep inside. I mean, I didn't find this out till I was, getting on. And so, it was, I was still around late 50s, I suppose, when I started to realise all this. And then we try to forget things and put them off, but they always reoccur. As soon as you're on your own somewhere, or even when you try to sleep at night, it's always there. It'll come back. So the fact is that we were made for love. God made us for love. Anyway, Di, you know a bit about this, don't you? So
I do, yeah, because I have experienced knowing God as my Father and loving me so completely and unconditionally. And like John was saying, I know I had that void. All I ever wanted, like everybody, was to be loved. And so I would do things to help people, and particularly with my parents growing up, I always tried to help them and tried to be the best daughter I could be, and tried to be as perfect as I could be, and I miserably failed at it, to be honest, as we all do. But when I encountered God, and when I encountered his love and knowing just how much he loves me, totally changed my life. And I realised that he loves the little girl inside me, the little girl that I am, the girl that is imperfect, and the one who is anxious and gets worried about things, and the one who has bad attitudes about things sometimes, the one who does sin. And when I knew that is the me that he loved, that's the one he loved, totally, unconditionally, perfectly, then the freedom that has brought me is amazing.
Yeah.
It's just incredible to know that my Father in heaven, who is absolutely perfect, the one who always wants what's best for me, the one who has the ability to give me what's best for me, he's the one who loves the real me that he knows, the real me that is certainly not perfect in any way. And it means that I can really relax and enjoy him, and I can be myself. And it took me a long time actually it's a journey, it's a process. It's taken me a long time to actually find out even who my real self is, because I spent so much of my life trying to please other people, and because I wanted to be loved.
Yeah.
I spent all my time doing that. And so when he started to love me and I started to experience his love, gradually, over the years, I've learned who I am, who he's made me to be, and I'm still learning.
Yeah.
It's a process, but just being able to sit here and know that whatever I do, whatever I say, whatever I think, he loves that person. He loves me for who I am in all of my weakness, in all of the times when I'm anxious and I'm not trusting him. He loves that person. And as he loves me, the more he loves me, the more I love him, the more I'm learning to trust him.
Yeah.
And so I feel so fulfilled and I'm so enjoying my life. Not because, and I'm not enjoying it because I have lots of exciting things to do, or because I've got loads of money and because I can do this, that and the other and I've got loads of friends. But because he loves me, and being loved by him is wonderful. That's all I can say.
Yeah. Would you sort of say that it's just the sheer satisfaction of it?
Yes, it's absolutely feels so. I think sometimes the way I think about it, it makes me feel so complete and so whole
Yeah.
and so satisfied, and it means that all these other things that in the past I've wanted to go after these things. I see people going after them, success and fame even, and wanting to be thought well of. All of these other things, they pale in comparison
I mean,
to being loved.
there's nothing wrong with those things,
No.
but we're talking about this longing inside.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's a longing that we all have, and to have that longing met
Yeah.
is just incredible. And it means, I mean, I've got to say, I enjoy my life and I enjoy everything I do, even chores that aren't the most exciting. When you're satisfied inside and you know that he loves you,
Yeah.
it's wonderful.
And what about like if you're, I don't mean it fades, but in the sense that you're not so aware. Do what do you do
I
about
mean,
that?
absolutely. I have many times where I think, I feel quite. I feel like you're far away today, Lord. I think where is he? What's going on? Or there's stresses and there's pressures. Over the last couple of days, I've been through actually quite a stressful time, and so I've called out to him, and I tell you what, he's so faithful. He said he'll never leave us as orphans, and he never does. And he comes, and it doesn't mean that all the time I'm bright and happy and everything's wonderful, but I know he's my rock. He's like a rock. It's like I'm standing on this firm, solid foundation. So whatever's going on, when there's all this craziness going on around me, I think, no, I believe him, and I know that he's my father, and I know that I can trust him. And so he brings that reassurance to me that everything's okay and that he's with me.
Yeah. Is it in that sense that it's real? It's almost tangible. It's real.
Yeah, it is, and I've experienced as well times when there's been a lot going on, and if you looked at what was going on in my life, you would think you ought to be really stressed about that, or really nervous, or really worried. And I have known his peace, and it seems ridiculous that I can be so at rest and so peaceful in such a situation. And that's when I know it's him. I know it's real, and I know it's him.
Yeah. More, can you add anything to that, or?
Well, I think mainly for me, I was brought up in a Christian home. We went to church most Sundays, and so from a little girl I was used to that scene.
Yeah.
You know, God was on Sundays,
Yeah.
and so life went on and everything, and then one thing happens and another, and you don't go to church for a long time, and you kind of forget all those sort of things. And then I met John, who introduced me by saying to me that he'd been saved, and I thought, what's he going on about? And I picked up that something had happened to him that had kind of given him a new lease of life. And like he shared, he had his ups and downs when he was younger. He was brought up Roman Catholic.
Not that that's wrong.
It was just a label, really. And then, of course, seeing what had happened to him, I was sort of asking myself, well, okay, so what are you then? Because you've been to church from a little girl, and so on and so on. Okay, we had a break in the teens. And then all this happened by meeting John. And together, he was a little bit ahead of me, but together we were able to see there was a real purpose in life that we'd not known. That, yes, there was a God up there, but you fitted in accordingly. And anyway, this whole thing went on for a long time. There was the joy, there was other thing, misery, trying to work out all this, being born again, and knowing God, but not knowing God for God, but he was my father. And so instead of being distant out there, or something up in the sky there, suddenly all this was coming together in here, and in here, in your mind and in your heart. And as we've processed through the years, it's got stronger in the sense of, what is a father? How do we see our natural fathers? Were they good fathers, not so good fathers, loving fathers, abusive fathers, whatever? This was our Father. God had come and revealed himself to us as our Father. And he, again, as time goes on, you find out more about things, you experience different things in your life. And like Di, when you go through the difficult times, and we all have difficult times, it was always that hanging on, where do I run? Where do I run? I run to my dad, to my father. And I know he's always there waiting. He's living in me. So I just feel to know the God as Father is such a thing when grasped. That whatever happens in any day, any time, you've got your Father to run to. And he never says, go away now, I haven't got time. But it's in here. I read once about it's an inside job when this happens to you. And it is, it's on the inside. And if you've had that experience, you know what I'm talking about. It's peace of mind, and he's my dad, and I'm his daughter.
Well, the Bible tells us that God made us in his own image and likeness, and so when Adam sinned and he broke off that relationship with God, then the rest of us as we're born, if the fact is that Adam was the first human being, so we're all born out of him. And then, there's lots of theories out there as to how man came about. But, I'm going to stick with what the Bible says. And the Bible tells us he made us in his image and likeness. And so when Adam failed and he sinned, he broke off the friendship, he broke off the relationship with God. But if I think about it, when Adam first opened his eyes, right, opened his eyes, whose face was he looking at? His Heavenly Father. So, because he's not only our Father, but he's God, he's Almighty God, and so therefore he's holy, he's otherly from us. And so he had to put Adam out. He had to put him away from his friendship and relationship. And, you know, so the rest of us are all saddled with the same thing. We're all born into the world not knowing God as Father. There is an answer to that, but we'll talk about that another time. But so every human being born since has this sense of loss. That's really the void. It's this sense of being separated from God, and actually many there's millions. I mean, someone was telling me not so long ago there are at least 2 billion Christians around the world. I don't know whether that's a accurate figure or not, but the fact is there are many people, many men and women around the world who have found the same answer and have come into this relationship. They've been reconciled in this relationship. So it's in this sense that we're all born fatherless, not knowing God as Father. And we all need to be restored to him, come back to him. So we'll leave it there for now, and we'll come back to it next time. Okay?